Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron and I am back again with more Battlytics excitement. We just looked at a whole bunch of really great mechs, the urban mechs. Now we're going to look at another inner sphere light mech. This one's a little bit heavier at 35 tons. This is the Hollander BZK-F3. There's somebody out there, you know who you are, that just loves the Hollander so much. And so I'm doing this review for you. Now, this thing comes in at 953 BV. Again, we talked about it, Inner Sphere Light. It was produced in 3054, and I think it's in TRO 3055, if I'm not mistaken. It's not super fast for a light mech. It's like a Raven, right? 5.8, or like at least the old Raven. So 5.8 profile. It's not terrible. It can still claim that +3 on the run, which is important. Dissipates 10, so, you know, it can basically dissipate more than it will ever need to dissipate, but 10 are basically built into every single mech, so that's the minimum there. Armor is abysmal. 4 tons, 71 pips, 59% coverage, and I mean, just looking at that central diagram, honestly, it's like terrifying. This is not a thing that I would ever want to be in. I think it has less armor than like a modern day like Toyota Camry. It's pretty bad. So Gauss rifle, that's what it's got. That's where all the tonnage is going. That thing is a beast. So this is like another one of those things. Can it survive long enough to really get its points back? I'm not sure. I mean, it's got 16 rounds on the Gauss rifle, so no issue there. But, you know, I'm looking at it, 1,000 BV, you know, just base costs unadjusted for pilot. But it's got the Gauss rifle, but it's got garbage armor. I don't know. The only way to tell is by running it through the benchmark. So, guys, stick around. Hollander Battlytics is coming right up. All right, here it is, the Hollander benchmarks on the offensive side. So the first thing I notice and the first thing that I love is that it's a, you know, almost a very flat damage curve, right? The thing can start doing damage immediately, and it does so all the way through to the front end of the benchmark. You do see a little bit of damage loss at close range because that Gauss rifle does have a minimum range. And I'm just checking my notes here. My giant chart. I do believe it's 1 inch, or is it 2? It's 2 inches. 2 hexes is the minimum range for that Gauss rifle. Otherwise, you're in great shape with it. And it can shoot out to 22 inches, 22 hexes, by the way. So it's a phenomenal weapon, as we all know. Builds up 1 point of heat. It's ridiculous. So over 12 turns, firing just a single Gauss rifle, this Hollander can do 110.8 points of damage. That is really, really good. When we look at the lethality, as expected, it is high. It kills the Javelin 72.8% of the time. Again, this is with a single, this is just a single gun, right? So you can miss with it and not do any damage, but this thing is still managing to clip 72.8%. Time to kill is average is 10.14. So that's very close to what we want. I mean, 10 is about average across the board for all mechs. So for a 35 tonner to kind of hit that average, I think that's very good. Critical hits are at 2.47, very high. And I think that's because the Javelin does not have enough armor on any location to withstand a Gauss slug. So pretty much every shot is generating a critical. And that is the, you know, the reality. That's the power of that Gauss rifle. And because you're able to hit it so far away, the average number of critical hits is just going up. Damage per hit, obviously flat at 15. There's only one weapon. It's got 12.3% of the head kills. It does have that decapitator, but most of the kills are coming through coring the thing out. All right, let's take a look at the defense. This is where this thing might fall on its face. Let's see what it does. All right, so the armor diagnostic, we mentioned this, it's really abysmal. I mean, the average distribution of armor across all of the parts is pretty good. But here's another one. This is like the urban mechs, like some of them I said it made sense with the rear armor. This one makes zero sense to me. You've got a mech that is basically designed to be running around very far away shooting a Gauss rifle, and yet the rear armor is above our expected target, whereas like legs and arms, I mean I guess the arms it doesn't matter, but legs certainly should be at least at spec for this mech. The head is just a little bit under as well. It's one of those weird ones. I think it has 8 pips, if I'm not mistaken, on the head, which means there's a lot of things that can actually take it out with an unfortunate shot. You don't have that full 12. You only have 11. So it's interesting. If somebody put some weapons in one of the other Battlytics, I was like, what things do 11 damage? There's some weird ones out there. Anyway, I digress. So let's talk about the mobility analysis. So 26.5% of the time, you're seeing a motive hit. Again, it doesn't have packed out leg criticals. It has very little leg armor. So basically, it takes a shot and then it's just losing speed. Its average target mod over the course of 12 turns is still pretty decent at 2.24, but you can see late game how that target mod completely degrades down to almost zero because it's losing legs, it's losing actuators, right? It's a mess. Now, in terms of overall survivability, you can see there 11.7%. Most of the time, it's getting blown out through the CT. There's some engine deaths. Of course, if that Gauss rifle gets hit, I mean that's basically death for this thing. The ammo, of course, isn't triggering a kill, but the Gauss rifle itself can explode. So some interesting things there. So for survivability is abysmal. This thing is definitely an artillery mech. You want to keep it in the back, not to spoil it, but we'll get into roles a little bit later. But that's at least my gut assessment as it stands right now. But let's take a look at the efficiency. Again, this thing does a ton of damage on the back end. The survivability curve does stay pretty flat and then kind of dips off again at that turn 8, turn 9 range. So maybe it will have done enough damage to earn its points back. Let's find out. All right, so it's not as bad as I thought. So 5.36 on the scale. So it's above average. It's sort of in the meat of the bell curve there. And that means to me like, hey, it's not something that you definitely shouldn't take. It's not going to be a top performer. And if it's singled out and killed, yeah, it's not going to do great. But if you can protect it, or you have things that are a bigger threat and more immediate threat, maybe faster mechs that have closed and sort of clogged up the firing lanes, this thing might be able to get a pretty good game in and get you some points back. So survival rate, again, we talked about it, 11.7%. That means the damage loss is 35.5%. That's very high. Obviously, you're probably thinking, well, the urban mech was 96%, but those things are a joke. Like most real mechs, you want to be around 10% damage loss, maybe 12 to 15 on the high end. 35.5 is definitely higher than we would like to see. But that also has something to do with the amount of damage this thing can actually do and the low survival rate. So if you look at the effectiveness chart up at the top, you can see where that purple damage area severely pulls away from like that, that blue optimized damage area. That's a substantial chunk of damage left on the table at those closer ranges. Let's talk about the sensitivity to gunnery. So it's about average, 0.55. You will get some return on investment by putting a gunnery 2 or maybe even a little bit better in this mech, but I wouldn't really go with a gunnery 0 or gunnery 1 in my opinion. I think gunnery 2, gunnery 3 is probably where you want to be. 1100, 1300 BV, certainly reasonable for packing a Gauss rifle on a 5.8 speed chassis, into your force. I think that's a good investment of points. The key again is keeping it alive. Like with anything, you got to keep it moving, you got to keep it mobile, and I think you do need to make sure that when you design a lance with a Hollander in it, you definitely need other things that need to be swatted. whether it's, fast moving locusts, or whether it's, wolverines that are tougher and can soak up fire, griffins, things along those lines, depending on what era you're playing in, of course. Or you can have it supporting much bigger, meaner mechs, like an assault lance, have it back up, have it be the, fourth mech in that, and so there's these things like king crabs and annihilators and atlases running around the table. Maybe they don't want to spend time on the Hollander, but again, this thing is very vulnerable. If I think about combined arms, the vulnerability to things like fast-moving hovercraft that can just take out your legs or whatever, you got to be careful with this mech. That's my number one takeaway here. Let's talk about threat and roles a little bit more and in more detail with some relevant charts in front of us. So in terms of roles, basically fire support, right? So it's just what I was rambling on about in the last screen there. So for me, you got to keep this thing back. You don't ever really need to close with it. I think the Gauss rifle does great in that 15 to 8 inch, that medium range bracket. I don't think you need to get into short range at all for this. One, you could get stuck in minimum range, right? Which you don't want. And if things start closing, I would turn around and run away, or backpedal, or do whatever it is that Hollanders do to get some more distance. Remember, you can torso twist with this gun, but it's not arm mounted. You cannot shoot out the sides or the rear with this thing. It is basically just a giant gun coming off the chest of the Hollander. It's reliable damage, 15 points. If you have a decent skill pilot, we were talking about this in the efficiency, skill 3, skill 2, gunnery 2, gunnery 3, however you want to, whatever flavor you want to say there. This thing will get good return with the damage. Just landing a 15-point shot is terrifying. You do have that decapitation potential. You do have that crit finding potential. So there's a lot to be said about the Hollander. Overall, again, it's an average mech in terms of how the Battlytics, and the analytics shake out. And that's because, again, survivability is just absolutely key to the performance of this mech. If you can double, triple, quadruple the survivability of this mech, get it in the 40 to 50 percentile range, because you are playing it smart, or you are providing other, targets that are a little bit more juicy than the Hollander, I think you can get this thing to perform. Conversely, if you're playing against a Hollander, get rid of it. They're super fragile. Just prime it, take it down, and then move on to deal with other targets. Don't fall for the bait and switch. Anyway, that said, guys, I'm all done with the Hollander. Leave a comment and let me know if you like the Hollander, if you've had success with it, if you hate it, if you think it's stupid looking, or if you think it's the coolest mech since the Battlemaster. I don't know, is the Battlemaster cool? I'm not really sure. Anyway, that's it. Guys, don't forget to go to Aries Games and Minis. That's my favorite place to shop because it has all the BattleTech stuff that I need for my retail therapy. If I want to buy lance packs or dice or books or novels or whatever I need, Aries Games and Minis is my #1 place. So definitely check them out. Also, guys, if you want to support the channel, as I mentioned, leave a comment, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. That's huge. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You just click the button in YouTube. If you want to help out the channel more, you can tip us through YouTube. There's a feature called Super Thanks, which is right down there on the bar with the with the thumbs up and all that stuff. It's right on there. There's also the merch, basically the merch shelf, as they call it, below the video. It just connects you right to Teespring, and you can get all different colors and sizes and all sorts of things. There's also a link in the description of every one of our videos to Teespring and on our website as well, so you can check out all sorts of stuff on there. Coffee mugs, posters, t-shirts, hoodies, all sorts of stuff. So there's that, and then of course there's Patreon if you want to help us out there. There's multiple tiers, and every dollar does help. So that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Battlytics review. More on the way as always. So of course, guys, stay tuned. Great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.